As part of our work, we also looked at fees that would be generated as far as the project. Now, some of them really don't mean anything because you charge those for every project coming to town, but the project would create $183,000 in building permits and sewer permits, and an additional $900,000 in sewer access fees should the town agree to allow us to hook up to the sewer system for the active portion of the project. Also, as part of the project, we met with the Historic Commission over the fact that 2 houses on Long Powder Mill are under the guidelines or fall within the guidelines of the Historic Commission. As discussed, they felt that these 2 buildings were significant and they should be preserved. As part of that, we agreed that they would be preserved and they would, however, would be relocated to one corner of the property. We then started to have a further discussion of whether or not they had any interest in the buildings, what the buildings might be used for, and no conclusion was reached that night, and it was agreed that we'd discuss that at a later date. Also, I met with the conservation admin in your town, Michelle, to review any concerns that she had regarding the project in the river. Really, there is no frontage along the river on the Maynard component. This is really more of an acting question, but it should be noted that currently today, the project has a number of old commercial mill-type buildings on there that have concrete and structures all the way up to the edge of the river, and what's being proposed would eliminate all that and to create a 100-foot width setback off the river, which we would propose to have paths installed for use by town residents as they feel appropriate. The project, I realize, creates a great deal of concerns when people hear, 74 units, 254 units, tall buildings, and there are a lot of, and honestly, I live in a community where we too have those same concerns when we hear of new projects. This has been thought out. There has been careful research done to look at the market, to look at the demand, to look at the need to provide this form of housing. We believe that this is a good solution. We believe that there are things that could be done that would even help to make it even what we could consider appropriate for the area, such as adding some form of a green solution, and see if we could extend the Crosstown Connect to include the project so that we could take people to and from the train station. And what this project also in part does is it provides additional affordable units to the town. Currently, the town does not achieve the mandate of 40B, which says that you must have 10% of your housing stock deemed affordable, and affordability is defined as those units that are recorded in perpetuity with the Department of Housing and Community Development. This project would in fact provide 19 affordable units that would be leased to people earning no more than 80% of the area median household income. And that's really targeted often at people who are your school teachers, who work in your police and fire department, and other municipal officers who are looking to live within the town in which they work. Addition of these units would bring you almost in compliance with the 40B, which will allow you in the future to be able to pick and choose as other units may come forth to decide where and how those units should be constructed and when they might be introduced into the housing stock. And with that, I think I'd like to stop and open it up to any questions that we share the question. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point we'll have questions, and if you want to understand,
come to the microphone, Mr. Chair?
please come. So if you're going to ask a question, come down to the microphone and just give us your name and address and ask away.
Doug from Park Street. I know this is a very emotional and
Microphone.
Keep talking so I can pick it up. Can you hear me? No? No? I'll give you my school teacher voice. How's that? Can you hear me now? No?
Gotta get the microphone. You should use the microphone and please direct
Hello?
questions to the chair.
Keep talking and
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just,
All right.
Mike, can you give us a thumbs up when her microphone's on? Or do you want to try, gentlemen, can you
Can you
test?
try the other microphone?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Ellen Duggan from Park Street. I know this is complicated, and I'm sure that there'll be people behind me who will pick up some of the things I'd like to talk, but we had some very forward-thinking ancestors over 100 years ago. We're the only town in this area that has sewer. That's something. Concord doesn't have it. Acton just runs from Kelly's Corner up to Christmas Street. Then Sudbury doesn't have it. Stowe doesn't have it. It's a very precious resource. I want to just make a concern about that in doing this and extending our system to a town outside Acton, that we are setting a dangerous precedent, and that, I think, is my biggest concern. I've tried to inform myself about this issue. I took it upon myself to look into the Acton Community Housing Corporation, which is the affordable housing of Acton's town government. And I noticed in their May 21st meeting, they, and I'm going to quote this so that I read it correctly, at 3 Main Street, under their new business, is a couple by the name of Abby and Roberto Fuente, who presented ideas for a new proposal for land they own on Main Street, totaling 1.2 acres. They will need to gauge its capacity for the number of new homes they want to build as a 40B project. The chair, Mrs. Tavernia, suggested that a major issue would be lack of sewers, and that consultation with the town of Maynard could result in offering a connection with its sewer system. So this isn't a fear that, you know, I'm putting out here to say it's not a good idea, but this is one. There's already another one lining up in Acton who may want to connect, and they were told to come to Maynard and talk about it. I can see other towns like Concord and Sudbury and other maybe projects in Acton, Stowe certainly, none of whom have sewer, who may decide, oh, they've opened the door now, why can't we join that? That is a big concern, and I just bring it to the board tonight. I think that's something we need to look very carefully at. And remember that this is an agreement with the developer. There is no agreement with the town of Acton involved here. I mean, we may want to look at something called an intermunicipal agreement at some point, because a few years ago the federal government required us to spend all the towns along the Assabet to clean the phosphorus out of the river. Some of you may remember that. Our share was $10 million. They could do that tomorrow, and if we have to upgrade, the developer is not chipping in on this. We don't have an agreement with Acton. So these are just things that need to be considered before you say this is a great idea. Those things that I hear being offered are wonderful things, but there may be other ways we can do that. That was a big concern of mine. The only other thing that I would say is if this is going to be passed and we're going to extend our very precious resource to this project, I think that any monies offered should go to the sewer system, period. That $2 million, the bleachers would be nice, and some of the other things would be nice, but I think that we found out the other night, a week ago tonight, a presentation at the FinCom, that I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, some 70-80% of our sewer goes through that pumping station behind the Middlesex Bank on Powder Mill. There's only one pipe under that river. If that failed, we would have a major problem in Maynard. Not just this system, but the whole town. And I know it's an aging system. We may have capacity, but it's old. My own street, we have 14 houses on, 7 have had sewer backup. Some their own fault, but some the line down the middle of the street. So it's an old system, and taxing it even further like this for an outside town just gives me pause. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Don't go away.
Yep.
We're all aging, but can you tell me, because I'm aging and I didn't write it down, the name of the organization in Acton?
Acton Community Housing Corporation.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You brought up a couple of the ideas that I was going to talk about, but I have a couple of questions also.
Give us your name and
My name is Deb Roussel. I live at 4 Grant Street. And I wanted to know, how much water do we need to run our sewage plant right now, just for our own town? And then how much would we need if we added these apartments to that?
how much water?
Yes, because we're in a ban, a water ban, which we have been in the last 5 years. So why do we have enough water to help someone else out?
We don't have water.
We don't have a water ban?
No, we don't have water to offer them.
No, but the sewage system, the water goes through the sewage.
It would be using Acton's water for the sewer.
Okay, but it would be our sewer that would have to deal with all of their water. So Aaron, how much water do we have that goes through the system now? Just for our town, on a typical day?
For wastewater? About 1 million gallons a day.
Okay, and so if we added those apartments to it, how much water would go through the sewer system?
I believe the estimate from the feasibility study.
Use the microphone, please.
Was what?
42,000 gallons a day.
42,000?
That would
Okay.
come from the town of Maynard, that'd be from Acton.
Okay, that would come from Acton. So we're putting more stress on our own system for another town, which, you know, is fine if we could do it. But I don't think that we should use our stuff that we've worked hard to produce and to get working, just because someone wants to build an apartment building near Maynard, Mass. Okay? I have one more thing to say. When we were talking, I read the draft about the $2 million that would be coming to Maynard. And for the schools, the part that you have is $250,000 for the schools. But they went to buy bleachers. I don't know how that helps our education process here in town by putting new bleachers up, other than the fact that right now our bleachers are closed because they're decrepit. But to me, that doesn't help our education purpose in town. And that's all I have to say.
The statement that the bleachers are closed because of decrepit is a erroneous statement.
Could you speak into your mic? Your phone don't.
Oh, Chris, somebody fell and then, and they closed them for a reason.
But that doesn't mean that they're decrepit.
But they need handles to go up. But whatever, what I'm saying, Chris, is they're offering us bleachers for education.
Yeah, which
To me, that's not educational.
well,
As a former teacher, I would rather have something in the classroom versus
I'm
bleachers.
just saying that the bleachers aren't closed because they're decrepit.
Right.
They're closed because there was an incident and someone was injured and they.
Right, okay.
We closed them for safety.
We don't have to disagree about that. I'm talking about what they're talking about, giving us money for bleachers.
I would only add, and I agree with you 100%, Deb, I don't think that's adequate mitigation for the school children that would be coming in from this project. The Board of Selectmen hasn't had a chance to negotiate this MOU at all, so
Right.
the developers first offered to us, so if we as a board after tonight choose to negotiate, I assure you that's the point we would bring up.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill Cranshaw.
He's the one that did work.
Bill Cranshaw, Mockingbird Lane. And when it comes to town finances, I'm a little risk adverse. And what I see so far from this project is a lot of benefits going to Acton and a lot of financial risk going to Maynard. And maybe they won't happen, maybe they will. But an example of what concerns me is in that draft memorandum of agreement, there's a section there that lists all those $2 million of projects. And that's wonderful. But there's also this sneaky little lawyer paragraph at the bottom that says we get $0 if any of the conditions put forth on the project by the ZBA get overturned by the state. We get 0. And it doesn't say a big condition or a little tiny condition. It says any condition. And I think that's pretty unfair to tie the hands of the ZBA because they're faced with the decision of, oh, do we tweak this project to make it a little better, or do we risk throwing away $2 million? So I'm hoping that paragraph doesn't stay in the MOA, and I'd be surprised if the active MOA even had it in the draft.
Hi, Dick Downey, Howard Road. On the Finance Committee meeting the other night, I guess our commit is 1.4 million gallons on the waste treatment plant itself, not the lines or anything else. And so that doesn't give us a lot of headroom from what we're currently using. And my concern is that what happens when Stratus, the old Stratus building gets built out, what happens to the other developments that happen along the town, especially Potter Mill Road. What happens when the mill fills up? We're going to be approaching our limit, which is what our permit is for. The plant itself was designed at peak for 2 million gallons a day, but that's an average. So the peak situation at any one time could be substantial and could push you over where you wind up putting phosphorus or various other things into the river, which would subject us to penalties. So I guess my point is, subsidizing another town with our sewer where we don't have that much headroom, should we have a build-out, I think is not in the town's best interest, and may in fact, at some point, cause some other development in town which would generate taxes in addition to that, would now not be permitted because we wouldn't have particular sewer capacity. Or, as the Supreme Court has found out in California, you cannot deny somebody in your town, and so you would have to allocate those resources, which means that everybody in town might have some kind of restrictions on them on a regular basis. So in essence, unless you can show in a build-out situation that you would have sufficient headroom, I would be opposed to this.
Tony Gomes, Great Road. Getting back to the school, I'm wondering how 74 units equates to 11 or 12 children? And is that just a 1 year or is that a multi-year assessment?
If I may. So, the studies that are used to benchmark to determine that, based on the number of kids that could be generated from a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom unit. And that's what statistically that's been experienced all through the Commonwealth in determining that. And so obviously a 1-bedroom unit doesn't generate children on the average. And so when you have 74 units and you divide them up, let's say half is school generating, half not, that's how the numbers came about. And that's spread over any given year through the lifetime of the project. And again, that's only statistically speaking. Obviously, Acton bears a greater burden on their side because of the many units that sit there and they would have to absorb those children.
But theoretically, we could be looking at a minimum of 30 to 40 children when you have half of them being multi-bedroom units. I mean, it's something to think about. We have 2 great new school buildings, but we do have one that is getting much older. And just something I want everyone to be thinking about as we're halfway through paying for this current building. So, thank you.
Elizabeth Steinville again, 4 Lincoln Street. My concern is with the emphasis on affordable housing. Back in, I think it was the early 90s, because I interviewed Bill Patrick about this around 93. The state had has issued legislation that every town has to be a minimum of affordable housing, which is great. Affordable housing is a good thing. Maynard is 8.6% there, to my understanding. I do not understand why we cannot convert a building that we have existing into affordable housing. Why we necessarily need to be beat over the head about this for a 70-foot building, which is what I understand it is, that will be a huge strain on our infrastructure. That's all. Thank you.
Dan Bresson, Hillside Street. Other than the affordable housing, it just almost seems like we're not getting all much out of this deal, which is a concern. But more specifically, the traffic study you did puts into question all the information coming out. I just don't understand how you could say there'll be no impact to traffic to putting 100, 200, 250 cars at rush hour on a street, one lane each way. I've traveled for commuting on 62, and you put a school bus in there and it backs up the whole thing. You can add a couple of hundred cars within the space of an hour or so and say that there's going to be no impact to traffic. Calls into question whether any of the other studies you're doing, because that's just unbelievable. I mean, do you have specifics to somehow back that up? Talk about turning lanes. I'm not a traffic engineer, but it just sounds incredible to me. You said there'd be no impact to traffic.
Again, the studies have been made available, and you certainly have to review them, but...
I did, and that's where my disbelief is coming from.
Well, I can tell you, we did a study of which it was then peer-reviewed by the town's consultant, and that was the process, and the conclusions reached by both these experts.
It makes no common sense to say you're going to put 200 cars on a one-lane each-way road and say there can be no impact. It just doesn't make any common sense. Okay.
Loretta last at Apple Ridge, and I'll just say first that I agree with what everyone else has said. I have a slightly different issue, and I'm speaking and representing myself. I'm a member of the Maynard Community Gardeners, and one of our groups maintain a number of areas around town, the Naperville Park, the downtown bucket, and the Gateway Planters. And a few years ago, there's the Gateway Planter on Powder Mill Road. And I'm not sure who owns the property or whether Maynard owns it by adverse possession, because they've been it for a number of years. It was really in neglect for years because of poison ivy and stuff like that. But last year, I took on the project and I cleaned it up. And I found that, and I have some photos I can give you, I found that after it was cleaned up, that there were some, and the juniper bush was cut back, that some sedum somebody had planted years ago came up, and they were okay. And this year they came up and they were beautiful. And so my concern is that I think that the Gateway Planters create visibility for Maynard. It shows that you're coming into our town. They're maintained beautifully. You know, my question is, if this comes to fruition, would the land be donated to the town to continue to be used, or would we have to go someplace else, because I feel we need that visibility, so that's just my comment, and I'm not really sure we need a lot of sewage coming to Maynard, but that's my opinion. I get used to that.
Terrific, thank you.
So to answer your question about gateway signs,
Gateway, yes.
with under, you know, since Bill Nose has been in town, that's been a focus of the town, you know, entryways and gateways to Maynard. So I don't know who owns those, but certainly...
The town does.
No, but I'm saying who owns the piece of land it sits on?
We don't know.
You know, I don't know the answer to that question, but there are several towns that are not on town land that we've worked through with developers and landowners to allow us to put our gateway signs. And certainly, you know, the sign that you're talking about and the work you do is appreciated. We'll certainly make sure that we have a gateway sign in the same
Right,
area.
I'd like to see it say more than just welcome to Maynard. You
Yeah.
know, want to have that continued, and if not, then my next request would be, okay, we have lots of plants there, we'd like to take them back if we were going to destroy it.
We'll do our best to keep the sign as close to it as possible.
If we're fortunate enough to move forward, I promise we'll reach out to you with the appropriate time.
Yeah, Bill Crenshaw again. A couple more comments on my avoiding financial risk to the town. One is about if we gave the Acton properties sewer, how would we collect if they decided not to pay? Because the way it works is that if you or I don't pay the bill, we live in Maynard, and Maynard can put a lien on our house, and sooner or later, the town gets paid. But Maynard can't put a lien on a property in Acton. So if we want to collect for somebody who's not paying, you got to do a whole lawyer thing, it's probably not even worth it sometimes. So my caution would be that we need to make sure we get some sort of bond from the developer or from the town of Acton that guarantees Maynard gets paid on time. Because we don't have a good enforcement mechanism. It would be pretty expensive. Now the next point I have is regarding the risk for the cost on the town, especially in the school, because everybody's worried about that. The study says it's going to be 11 or 12 kids, and so everything's going to be like a break-even financial. And that may be, but it might not be. So I'm wondering if we can't give some of that risk to Acton, and at the same time, make it better for the people who live here. Because, there's going to be, I don't know, a dozen Maynard kids and a few dozen Acton kids, and they're going to go to different schools. They could live across the hall. Literally, they could live across the hall from each other and go to different schools. I'm suggesting that we get Acton to commit that if any of the Maynard people want to go to an Acton school, they automatically can go. And Acton pays the bill, by the way. And it shouldn't be a big lift for them. I mean, it's supposed to only be 11 or 12 kids. So why not move the risk to Acton? They're getting all the benefits out of this project. Why should we take the risk down the road?
Hi, Kathy McMillan, Shoya. I'm wondering if any thought has been given to what's going on at Parker Street and how that's going to impact the sewer and the school system. There's over 200 units going in there, plus the businesses. I think that should be taken into account before this. Thank you.
Cornelia Keenan, Great Road. How do we charge for sewage when we're not charging for water? My sewage bill is based on my water usage. And do you put meters for sewage?
To answer your question, there's a couple ways that could be done, but clearly that any water usage, obviously there will be a main meter in each building, but as a matter of practice in the ongoing management, these buildings, every unit, whether it be on Maynard side or Acton, is separately sub-metered as well too. As we promote ecology, promote to try to get people to reduce their water usage, and we found the best way to try to do that proactively is to make them responsible for their own sewer and water bills. So the answer to your question is there could be a metering system in place to accomplish that.
Yes, but it will be in place.
For sewer?
Sewer is typically based on water usage, so as long as we manage...
So it means that Acton will get the figures. They won't come directly to us, will they?
No.
Because Acton is picking up the water.
We're aware of that, but if the information is provided to the municipality and Maynard so that they have transparency into the usage by the individual residents, we are expecting that there would be a mechanism in place that would ensure that they would be billed accordingly. So the answer is that while the lawyers need to work it out, there's no question about it. We're going to make sure that everybody pays the appropriate amounts.
Well, I assume the selectmen will take care of that.
Absolutely.
Just a couple of comments. I was reading the MOU, and under Section D, sewer connections, it reads, should additional connections be required or requested, the town reserves the right to require additional water and sewer fees. I think that might be a typo, because if we're not going to provide water, what control do we have over the fees? So you might want to just look at that section. I don't know whether that's correct. The second thing, recently I had heard that the study for schools for the Concord Views predicted 40 students, and the last I heard there were 119 students living there. And the only other thing many of you may not remember, but in 2011 we rezoned Mill and Main to allow for 500 apartments. So whether they're in the mill or whether they're in the surface parking lots, they are zoned to be allowed 500 apartments. So keep that in mind too.
David Mark, 10 Maple Street. I'm curious about this 12.65 acres. Obviously, a lot of this is hard surface and any water runoff. What percentage is built out? What percentage is reserved for green space? And what's going to happen to the stormwater drain off once this is completed? There are estimates for those sort of numbers.
A couple of things. Right now, when you look at the amount of impervious areas, we expect to improve upon that and increase the green area about 10% from what currently exists. We have not yet designed the water system for that, but it's envisioned to go underneath the parking lots to be a chambered system of some sort. And sometime between now and should we get to a point where we're making application to the zoning boards, that will be fully engineered at that point in time.
Okay, so that's a good point. Thank you, because actually it is already paved, so the problem already exists with water runoff. It's not going to be a new problem. The second question is for the border of the river, is there any proposal for this being public access to a path along the river? Because Maynard and Acton have very little access to the Assabet River, and I wonder if there's any potential there for providing trailer path access next to the river.
We are going to provide a public easement along that river frontage, and we are going to put a path in place as part of the project. So it's our intention to do that. Now, we don't necessarily solve the problem of where that connects to. We're hoping that this will be a first step towards trying to find other landowners who are willing to also join in and provide access to the riverfront.
Thank you.
My name is Taylor Leak. I'm at 101 Powder Mill Road, so just across the street from the proposed project. And I commute every day down 62 to Route 2. I was taking a look at the traffic study. It looks like it was only done in the very immediate area of where the two driveways would come out onto Powder Mill. And my concern is really that that's not where the traffic holdup is in that route. It's really when you get into West Concord, getting on Route 2 and then further down. So I'm wondering if there's, first just to bring that concern forward, and also just wondering if there are plans to do further traffic assessment. I shared the previous concern from the previous comment that adding 200 cars to a road just seems like it's going to have an impact somewhere, and if there are plans to look at where that might be.
The only thing I can say is the answer to that is we have yet to get feedback from that as what they may or may not require as well on their side. So I don't have the answer to that for you today.
Thanks.
My name is Jim Fulton. I want to go back to the issue of the water meters just briefly. We're talking about 274 units in this complex. Are you intending to install water meters for each of those units, and then the bill would be going to you separately 274 times, or would there be a master meter for service from Maynard that would allow just one service bill for the entire complex?
Well, the answer to that is a little bit more complicated than that. There is one master meter that comes into each building that the owner will receive. They, in fact, then we hire out to an independent firm, typically a firm called Knoll, who we then put electronic submeters in for each unit. And they go ahead and calculate and determine the actual amount of usage per each one. So there's the master, and then we get the total of the individuals, and we're able to correlate those, the difference sometimes being just lawn irrigation if it was permitted. So we do have a way to track it and track it all the way to the actual occupant of the unit.
Okay, so the reason I'm bringing this up is that the average resident in Maynard is serviced by 1 meter, and that service entails a tiered usage. So the usage changes the bill goes up or down appropriately. And so when you're sending bills out to your tenants, hypothetically your tenants, then you're going to be spreading that cost out, I'm supposing, by just one division number, correct?
Well, actually, we have this situation in other properties that I happen to be involved in as well too, and so when these buildings are occupied, they usually have the maximum tier rate at that point in time, and so, you know, the information is again fed to the independent company. There's Massachusetts law guidelines for these days for unit owners and how that's to be done, and so we'll follow whatever the law is at the time in place, but it does take into account the tier system you described.
Okay, so if we sent you a bill from our service, it would most likely be at the maximum tier, is from what I'm understanding.
One would expect that that would be based on my understanding of how these tiers typically break down, and I have again examined this particular one. But that's typically what happens once they're at full occupancy.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't a situation where you were getting a bill, the bill was being divided equally, across tenants that way.
No, because you can have, one person living in an apartment who never does the laundry, as an example, right? He's behaved differently and has different water usage from somebody else. So the answer is that no, it's based specifically on the usage of that particular occupant.
So we send a bill to you, and we're getting paid based on a tiered rate, the maximum rate. If someone's living in a one-bedroom unit there, and they're using the minimum, if they were living in an individual unit in Maynard, they would be paying a rate that would be somewhat less. So are they paying the rate, your unit equally? All of the people pay the rate, an equal rate, times whatever the usage is. That's my question. I'm trying to.
My understanding of the law, the way it's currently written, is it allows the owner to, if the building in itself is being assessed at the highest usage rate, that's the rate that's set for each individual person as well in their use.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Bill Crenshaw again, my last time here. I'd like to hear, I guess, from the town and from the developer, what the plans are to improve the sidewalks and bicycling in that immediate area. Because one of my obvious concerns is the project is isolated from even the Stop and Shop plaza just up the road. And the LIP application makes a big deal about the Stop and Shop plaza. It says this is a wonderful project because it's so close to these stores. But it's really hard to get to those stores, and it's actually really dangerous to get to those stores. Because there's no continual sidewalk on the side on the riverside. If you want to go along a sidewalk from this project to Stop and Shop, you got to cross the street, and there's no pedestrian signal across the street. There's not very good lighting when you cross the street. You got to go walk down past all these businesses with these driveways that are like 200 feet wide. Then you got to cross Sudbury Street, where there's no light to help you cross there. And then you got to walk all the way down to Acton and then cross at the plaza, where there is a light. So I'm just curious, is Acton going to be putting in new sidewalks and bike lanes and new pedestrian crossing signals? Or is the developer doing that, or the Maynard doing that? Who's doing that stuff?
Well, the answer I have only for you today is that the discussions have only been in our work group, the idea in Maynard to create connectivity into the existing sidewalk system. We have not had any further discussions with Acton yet, but those discussions are about to begin. So your point is well taken, and I appreciate the feedback.
So in Maynard, we haven't even talked about putting a pedestrian signal across the street?
Not a pedestrian signal, but we talked about connection and adding sidewalks to connect to existing sidewalks along Powder Mill.
But you're talking on your side of the river side of the Powder Mill, not the other side, right?
Again, yes, I guess that would be true.
But you haven't talked about how to get across the street, which, by the way, back in the day, a couple people were killed crossing the street. So I think you should add it to your list.
Thank you.
I just had a follow-up thought. Standing here, listen to everybody speak.
Sorry, can you restate your name and
I'm sorry, Dan President, Hillside Street.
Thank you.
think just about everybody who's come up here has talked about how we're going to get around the problems generated by this, whether it's sewer or water or fire or kids or traffic or all those things. I've not heard anything of well, not anything, but the affordable housing thing sounds like there is a benefit to the community. And the access to the river sounds like a nicety, that's something positive. But other than that, I haven't heard nothing that is a benefit to the community. Financially, it sounds like it's almost a wash or a minimal, increase. And all the other stuff is just how we're going to handle problems that are generated by this. What is the purpose of doing this if there's no real positive effect on the community?
Well, again, in this form, I apologize if I didn't make the point clear. There are a couple things first off to consider. In the economic end of the deal is we are talking about potentially some form of litigation, which is a financial contribution to the town. In addition to the fact that the substantial monies advanced towards hookup charges. But really the point of the project is that in today there is a change very much in the need for housing and diverse type of housing stock. And that the rental used to be sort of deemed in the past as something that was done by necessity, not by choice. And it's our goal to develop a first-class, Class A project that provides this as a desirable place to want to live, to have 9-foot ceilings, with having all the amenities associated with it, with having walk-in closets, to having, clubhouses and grills and outdoor.
I'm not questioning the quality of your facility, no question. But how does that enhance Maynard?
Because it offers then choices for housing stock. So today, if you're a renter, often in many communities, is that you're stuck necessarily living in stuff that was developed in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that don't have those particular amenities, wasn't specifically designed for. And if you therefore can't afford a house, you have a choice. Either you live in older apartments or you live in a house that maybe you can or cannot afford. This offers for young professionals who want to move into a community, where you want to join a community, where you really want ultimately to be the people who own your homes, who bring kids in the community to become the next generation, that this becomes a great opportunity for them to have an alternative that they would want to live in. The second thing is for the elderly population who wants to age in the community, who wants to downsize. These are going to be fully ADA accessible, elevated buildings with underground parking that provides, therefore, an alternative for them as well, too. So there are many attributes of the project, and I apologize for not really starting off my discussions about that really create an alternative to what exists currently in town today. And so that is a benefit, and it's a huge investment by the developer. And while everybody likes to think that this dollar signs is risk of market, risk of interest rate, there's risk of construction, there's lots of risk, but at the same time, you have somebody who's willing to invest $50 million, plus or minus, into the community in an attempt to advance and provide this type of housing stock, of which maybe he'll be very successful and do well and earn lots of money. He'd like to, certainly that's what he wants me to tell him, and maybe he will just do okay. But it's a huge risk for trying to offer this particular alternative to the community. So there is some thought to what it is we're trying to provide.
Okay, it just sounds like the town is taking a huge risk too, so.
Well, I mean, there's no question about it that often these relationships, and it's a form of a partnership. There's a lot of give and take in discussion because, there's a perception always that the developers come in and I get the reaction, huge dollar signs involved. They must be making lots of money. And the answer is you're absolutely correct. There's risk for both the community and the developer, and that's why our hope is to have gone through the LIP process and not go through the unfriendly 40B, because we wanted to open up the discussion. We wanted to see whether, in fact, we could reach agreement on what are the things that could be done that might be beneficial to address it. Can we solve every problem in the town? The answer is no, we can't. Can we do something to contribute towards concerns about the sewer system? Yes, we can. And not just the hookup fee, beyond that. The issues you're facing on Powder Mill and that system that we learned through the camera, even if we disappear tomorrow, are the same problems the town and the people who live along that corridor will face in years to come. There are ways in which the two can work together, both the town and the developer. Maybe you'll like us, maybe you'll hate us, but don't think we came in here without giving some thought to try to see whether we can reach an equitable way we can walk down the path together.
It'd just be nice to see some benefits for the people who aren't going to get to live there.
Well, I understand that, but there are many things that happen as a result, and I know that, the answer is sure there could be 100 school children living in that many units. By the way, that would be against the law because you're not allowed to do that, but that's besides the point. The point is, I get the issue, I get the concern, but I think that if you start to look at everything on point, realize that there really is a balance that can be achieved between the two parties. They don't have to be necessarily always against each other. And I had the nicest thing said when we did the information here in the library once. Said, the woman came up and said at the end, she said, I like you, I just don't like the project. And so I thought the comment was nice so much is that, one of the goals that I have always as a spokesperson is that I don't want you to make this about you don't like the way I'm addressed or the way we speak. We want to try to talk about the real issues that are affecting both parties. The work group was intending to try to create a group out of a public forum, I admit, but it was not done, no deals were cut, in an effort to try to explore, to be able to describe them, to be able to study them, and therefore when it was time to come to the public forum, and the public not only is getting their input through the LIP process now here at the Board of Selectmen, but they also get to do that again if we go so far as even the ZBA. It's not meant to take out the public by any means whatsoever. It's meant to try to bring them in, but it's also to try and bring some productivity to the discussions, which is what we tried to do over the last year.
Sounds like at the very least there's a lot of negotiations and it still needs to be done.
So that may be true.
We'll see how that works out. Thank you.
Hi, Rachel Bergen, 25 Great Road. And I wanted to go back to one of the issues that is going to impact our schools in that our current transportation system is underfunded for the demand. And it doesn't take into account any kind of safety hazard that a child may need to navigate on his or her way to school. And so now we're going to put more kids in an underfunded transportation system and put more kids on roads without sidewalks and without crosswalks. And it's a matter of time before one of these young children pay the price for our not funding their transportation system.
I'm Kevin Butler, I'm on Deerpath. My question, Mr. Chairman, is to the Selectman. I do favor, as I've said before in your meetings, an appropriate 40B development in our town. I think we can use it. I don't happen to agree with the scale or the street side appearance of this particular one. But my remark or question to you has to do with the Memorandum of Understanding's flat rate buy into the sewerage system in perpetuity as it's currently stated. That's a nice capital buy-in to the only town sewer system in the area, town-wide sewer system in the area, as our first questioner commented. The perpetual nature of it is a deal I'd like to get from Verizon, for example. And it seems that that puts us at extreme risk 50 years down the road or 100 years down the road to have a single flat fee to buy into our system. It might be more appropriate either to let them share the risk in some way, contract with them, that any additional assessments or expenses that we incur over the perpetuity are also allocable to them. Or, I think a very interesting plan would be to let the deal expire at the end of the lifespan of our lift station behind Middlesex Savings Bank, which is 15 years from now. I think that 15 years is a nice interval, gives them a good kickstart. They can start to build their own sewage treatment in their backyard or whatever it is they do over there in that primitive town. But I do resist the notion that we offer them our aging yet wonderful sewer system forever.
A comment, just so that everybody's very clear, is submitted to the Board of Selectmen, of which council or nobody has yet to comment on it. And so I would please not read overly too much that in any way the Board of Selectmen or the council has agreed to anything within that agreement, agreed to language within that agreement. It was just starting with a blank piece of paper and offering something up for discussion. So please take it in that context. Thank you.
Marilyn Messenger, Deer Path, and just full disclosure, I am vice chair of the ZBA. I'm not here representing them. I just picked up on something really interesting, Joel, that you mentioned in terms of the benefit, which is to provide a type of housing that we don't have currently in the area in Maynard. We have the Muse in Concord, which is 5 minutes away, and Acton has some upscale apartment buildings. But what's really curious about this is you sort of have two parts of affordability, because all of Maynard is affordable compared to the more surrounding, more affluent towns. So within Maynard, and I understand 40B, I've been to classes, I know how it works, we have to have it. But within the Maynard component, you're going to have the affordable units and you're going to have market rate units. Same for Acton. However, the market rate units in Maynard are less value. You get lower rents in Maynard. If you don't know that, you'll find it out, than you do in Acton. So you have affordable, maybe a little less affordable for the market rate in Maynard, and then you have some affordable in Acton, and then you have some very expensive market rate. The Muse is really expensive in Concord. So as Bill Cranshaw mentioned, and then you've got kids living across the hall from each other going to different schools. Could you address the socioeconomics of that? And also, are all of the apartments going to be equivalent? Or will they be, the Maynard apartments be exactly the same as the Acton apartments? Or how's that all going to work?
That's a good question. First off, we're not painting one unit one color and one town yet. They're all identically the same. And there is also no change in the market rate of the unit. We're not sitting there just because the unit happens to fall in the line of Maynard to say that the rental rate, therefore, is different in Maynard than in Acton. We can't run a project like that.
But it has to be, because if you look at rents and values in Maynard, how can you charge the same market rate for a unit in Maynard as you do in Acton?
It doesn't correlate in this particular example you provided. It doesn't correlate. The project will be new construction. It will, the only subtleties of rental in the project is by usually sometimes corner units and, back-facing units, but there is no difference.
So they're all going to be the same?
All going to be exactly the same.
And all the affordables are going to be based on the same income ratio? Which is different for the two towns.
Well, on the affordability side, again, that's slightly differentiated because it's 80% of median household income. And so, but the answer is that they're all going to be market rate units the same, they're all going to be constructed the same, they're going to look the same.
So an apartment in the Muse of 1 bedroom right now is $2,000 a month. I know this is true. That's for the regular, okay? So if somebody's going to move to this development and they're going to have the choice, so they're going to pay $2,000 for a 1 bedroom in Maynard, or they're going to pay $2,000 for a 1 bedroom in Acton, and Acton schools, I'm sorry, still get better ratings. People are willing to pay for that. Why is somebody going to pay $2,000 for an apartment in Maynard? So just pointing that out. Something to think about. It's a reality. Also, in January, the Selectman, and appreciate your hard work. It's hard to sit up there and listen to all this. I attended a meeting in January where the consultant was discussing the water and sewer rates for Maynard. And I went home going like, whoa, this is really, really bad. I had no idea. And our rates went up, and two-person household, my quarterly, it's $300 a month. My husband says I take too many showers, but I don't really think it's my fault. And the consultant said that this is not the first ratings we're going to get. This is going to be continuation because our system's old and we don't have any money to repair it. How can putting more units online, I mean, are our rates just going to keep going up and up and up, making what is now an affordable town unaffordable into the guise of adding affordable housing? It just, I'm having trouble making sense of that. Thank you.
Tony Gomes, Great Road. Couple of questions. My first, is a decision made from this meeting or does this come to town meeting for a vote?
This is the first meeting we've had to allow the public's been involved in.
Okay.
And now we'll go and we'll have our meetings and discuss this in open meeting. So going forward, every meeting with Joel or otherwise will be an open meeting.
Okay.
So we'll have open meetings to discuss all these issues and any other issues that come across for this project. But we haven't decided anything. So we still haven't as a group opened the MOA at page 1 and gone from page 1 to the back. We haven't opened the LIP as a group and gone from page 1 to the back.
Okay.
This is just the very beginning of that process for us. And everything else that we do going forward will be public. So when this meeting will not, make the decisions. Obviously, the input and the discussion points and the statements may be considered, but there's a lot of information that we get that we'll have access to, and we'll have people come in based on some of your questions, some of your concerns. We'll raise questions and concerns among ourselves, which we'll bring in VHB and the traffic study. People ask how we've had 3 people come in and tell us that 200 cars a day has to impact the traffic study.
Right.
And we'll ask them how is it that it doesn't? We talk about, crosswalks on Great Road. That side of the Great Road, from this project down to downtown Maynard, is sidewalks. And there are crosswalks. Going the other way to go Cranshaw's Point, I walk it almost daily. There are no sidewalks after Wendy's on the left side of the road as you go out of town. So you're walking on the street, that's a concern, but it's a concern that, Joel will have to address with Acton. Certainly we're not going to tell Acton where they're going to put their sidewalks. But this is just the first night of many nights that the 5 of us will spend, and you're all welcome to come to every meeting. But we'll spend with the thoughts tonight, we're recording this, Becky's taking minutes, so all the concerns will be addressed. But we'll follow up with the concerns with the experts, the people that Joel has hired, the people that we've hired to do the peer reviews to discuss and get the answers as to what your questions, what really lies behind your questions, and questions about traffic studies and school numbers and what the Rutgers report really means to the town of Maynard, because the Rutgers report, in case anybody doesn't know, is from 1976. There's a lot of people in this room that weren't here in 1976. So that's a study we still use today, and everybody in the country uses it, but it's pretty old. So we have all those questions, and we'll follow up. But this is just the first of many long nights for us going through these things. If we decide that we want to accept the LIP and negotiate, we might decide that we don't want to accept the LIP and not negotiate. So this is day 1.
Day 1. Okay. Second question is, will we have an opportunity to ask Superintendent Girardi and the head of the DPW questions directly on how they see this impacting versus the other projects that are slated on the books to happen?
Yes, we will do. They're here tonight, so if you wanted to ask either one other question, I think they would probably answer it. But maybe they're not prepared, so we can, but they will be in. And if we're going to have, going forward, if we're going to have Aaron into one of our meetings, typically that's on the agenda, or if we're going to have Dr. Girardi in, typically that's on the agenda. So usually on our agenda, which comes out, the weekend before, Friday before our meetings, we'll put, when the Powder Mill Road is going to be on the agenda, we'll put Powder Mill Road in. If there are speakers coming in, we'll make sure that we list the speakers so anybody that wants to have questions asked for those people can come in and answer those questions.
Okay, so can we submit questions to you guys that, I have ABC, and then you can invite them to come and they're prepared for questions?
Sure. And you can get, all of us have the same email address. It's our first initial and last name at townmayor.net. So you can send it to us, you can send it, to Craig Johnson, the town administrator, and we'll get the questions and we'll get them before the people that they should be asked of.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Hey, Downey Howard Road, I just wanted to clarify that I'm not opposed to the project. I'm opposed to putting storage in a non-maintenance location. I also want to say that we need to be realistic that this property and other properties in town are going to get developed over time, and we're not going to be able to restrict that. So I think I'd like to give some credit to the developer for taking this process as opposed to just putting the more controversial or confrontational system and finding out what our concerns are, and hopefully we can ameliorate a lot of the things that have been discussed here this evening. But I just wanted to clarify that I don't think with the limited headroom we have on the sewer that we should be doing a non-maintenance location.
Ron Clevery, Deerfield. I have a couple comments. One is just to remind everybody that we did pass inclusionary zoning, and there are currently 60 affordable countable units, either in permit or about to be in permit, and I think we all support that. So versus the 74, we're closer than 74, realizing that's a moving target over time. The second thing is, my real concern about this is the density of the project, and I'm sort of an accountant, so I kind of think in numbers. And if you looked at our zoning, our predicted zoning, it's on the property, the 2.2 acres in Maynard is on single family. If we change it to multifamily, then at 5,000 square feet per unit, there's 90-some thousand, that would give you 19 units. So it's affordable. We all agree on those projects. You do something more than the zoning. There are waivers that will apply. 19 to 74 is a big difference. So I hope in your negotiations you would consider whether 1,200 square feet per unit versus zoning of 5,000 is reasonable. The last thing I would like to talk about is there's been discussions about whether we could be compelled to provide sewer to the whole project or to Acton, and there's been different things. There's a FAQ in here that sort of implies we could. It says that unless we can prove that it's technically or financially unfeasible, that we have to do it. And with all due respect to all our attorneys, I hired an attorney, and that attorney from Boston gave me an opinion that said that can only be done by an act of the legislature. And so let me be more specific. There are two lips. The lipping that we have been given for 74 units, we would have to provide water and sewer to those if that's what needed to happen. For the other units in Acton, we have absolutely no responsibility whatsoever to do that. There are various court cases to that effect. So when we talked about this a couple of meetings ago, the suggestion was made that in the Maynard lip, having sewer for homes in Acton is not correct, at least in some people's opinions. I happen to be one of those people. So I think there are three parts to this. There's a Maynard lip, there's an Acton lip, and there's a question of, as I think Ellen mentioned, whether we want to have an intermunicipal service agreement. That's part of Chapter 40 of state law. And the difference, and that doesn't mean you wouldn't sell sewer to Acton, I don't think we should, but if you wanted to do that using the intermunicipal agreement means two entities that theoretically will legally exist forever will make a contract and will guarantee that if sewer fees aren't paid, they're collected. And for anybody who thinks that can't happen, the Clocktower Place a few years ago didn't pay their taxes, it didn't pay their water, it didn't pay their sewer. So I would much rather see us have an intermunicipal agreement, especially since there seems to be other things that might happen with requests for sewer. And as far as mitigation and things, there's no reason why we couldn't get mitigation. And whether Acton charges the developer or whether they agree that they pay us, I think is a detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
And thank you.
You don't come up and just break the microphone.
Well, I'm technically not competent to put it back together.
Get someone to fix it.
I'll try, but I didn't want to take all your time. So there you go.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Good evening, Margaret Ann Wiles, 58 Summer Street. Currently, it seems we know the developer that we would be working with. My concern is that if down the road we're working, let's say the developer sells to somebody else, that our agreement covers any future owners of the property, so that,
Most of the agreements will follow the property. The memorandum of agreement or understanding, MOA or MOU, it's been called both, typically will follow the owner of the property. So if the ownership changes, the MOA does not. It follows, we had a similar situation with the original 129 Park Street project. The MOA followed the property.
very good, thank you.
Thank you.
That's also the ZBA decision to upon which we granted. That was followed.
Hello, Elizabeth Spender, Lincoln Street. Two things. One is I was a little bit confused with the earlier comment about being okay with the project, but having reservations about going ahead with the waste tying and providing waste treatment to another town. And I think your answer to this question will clarify that for me. Does this project go forward if Maynard does not approve the waste thing? Sharing the waste. I mean, does the building go ahead whether or not Maynard approves waste, sharing its waste infrastructure with Acton?
At this moment, I'm not willing to give you the conclusion. I'm just going to say all alternatives will be certainly looked at. It is our hope that we can reach agreement. That's our goal.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is that if, as I think I heard you say earlier, that you felt strongly that your firm the developer felt strongly about the community and would try to develop a community within the building and tie them in. How are you going to do that as to what Bill Crenshaw was saying when you don't do anything to tie? Let the people come in to use our facilities. Maynard has been given a designation by the state as a cultural district. It's the Aspen Cultural District. It was given to us largely because we're walkable and we have a lot of rich resources, and the people in that building can't use these. My concern is that you're going to have a lot of wind going through that building, and Maynard's going to have a building that's not particularly vibrant.
Well, I could just tell you this in the other communities that I oversee on behalf of owners is that we work very hard at the concept of trying to create community. And I know that sounds, everybody loves to say, it's every condominium project. But we do, because, when you can create any sort of sense of getting people to feel that this is home to them, then they don't move a lot. And to be quite honest, it costs money every time somebody leaves, we lose some turnover takes place. The answer is, that's not our goal and objective. Will there be transient population who will change because their partner may move or lose their job, or they may lose or transfer their job, or all those other things that can happen? Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Glad you
And we log every time somebody leaves in any project I'm involved in, and I want to know the answer as to why. What was it that they not liked living there? And those are the things we try to address. And so in the 1,000 units that I've been involved in now that I oversee and some involvement, we work very hard at trying to make sure that we've addressed the needs of the people, what they're trying to look for as best we can. I'm telling you, it's a huge investment, and I know you don't care about that part, but we are very much concerned, if not more so, about the success of the project.
Well, thank you. I hope that you can work with, I appreciate all of it. You've gone to a lot of different places to get opinions, and I think that's great. I hope you continue to do that from town, asking people about this and that and the other. And I want to thank everyone there for making this possible, that we can express our concerns and our questions. I know it's an awful lot of work, and I thank you.
I just want to add that, I sit up here and obviously take bullets happy, because honestly, I also want the input. I know that you're all concerned and happy, and, we try to come up here to at least start to add credibility that, it's real people trying to do good things, and to establish a relationship with the community from the onset. Besides which, I did want to tell you, I'm greatly offended nobody ever claps for me, but that's okay.
Good evening, Paul Copley, SB Avenue. I want to go back to the 40B section again. The gentleman that spoke earlier, it was sort of a follow-up to his comment. Of the 74 units, 19 of them will be 40Bs or affordable housing, correct?
Correct.
There's a comment in here too that 70% of that will be held for Maynard residents to be eligible for.
There is a process in the 40B where you need to give what's called local preference. It says when your development's done, the first thing you must do, and there are very specific guidelines, such as advertising locally, postings, community meetings, but the first thing you do is you look in the town in which you have put these units in and try to see whether in fact there are people from that town who want to move in. Certainly the developer can't be held out after that, but to necessarily hold them back. But that's the first step of the process in the lease-up, is we go through a lottery, local preference system, and we truly try to make this as accessible as we can to the residents in there.
Okay, so in 2 years, we're going to be reassessed again, and we're going to have another up to maybe 92 units that we need to have for affordable housing. So one of my questions is, of the 70%, why can't that be 100% for Maynard residents instead of 70?
You can't, again, you got to be careful. You don't want to be involved in the management of the building and you're not taking the risk. So the management needs to make sure that the place stays occupied, obviously, because they're going to have to pay their taxes and their mortgage payment, just like you do in your own home.
Sure.
And so you can't get involved in the so-called day-to-day management of it. The answer to your question is that you're absolutely right. As a new census comes out, the 10% is recalculated once again for the next decade, and that becomes the number of households. And so what a lot of communities try to do is not just to get to 10%, but to try to get to 10.5, to get to 11%, to try to anticipate in part that growth. And as a reminder, the advantage of any rental project, whether ours or any other town that you may consider is that, when you do a for sale project and you say that I want to be 40B, well, only 25% of those units count towards affordability. And so that's hitting that 10% mark. Where a rental, 100% counts. So even though that only 19 are deemed affordable, you get the benefit of the full 74 units towards your affordability requirement. And that's sort of the trade-off between rental and for sale that a lot of communities are faced with as they try to deal with 40B applications as they're presented. And so, this is rental, you'll get full credit for 74, and that'll help you to hopefully, get past the 10% by a bunch and take this off, of any concern in the future.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't know that.
I'm still Kevin Butler from Deer Path. Mr. Khan, I'm going to challenge you. I'm sorry that we're sending all our arrows your way. I trust you will make your client pay you for it. Early in your remarks, you said that it was because of geography, these two contiguous parcels that your client has purchased. It was a requirement, you said, that both towns go through the process together, and I'd just like to challenge that for a moment. Of course, they haven't been developed together heretofore. They've been developed independently by their then owners.
If I misstated it simultaneously, not as one here. They both deal with it's two separate applications, but they need to do it on parallel paths.
Right. Our portion of this project is very small. As you said, we have just a little over 2 acres, I think, on the line. Unfortunately, most of it is the street side mass. And so we get to absorb this facade, which I think will turn out to be out of keeping for any property on Route 62 from Concord to Bolton. So it doesn't really fit our town very well. Acton would have to decide that on its own. But the heights and the character of that property are quite incongruous to what's happening in our little mill town. And I would submit that it might be to your advantage to require that this be done simultaneously because it implies joint sewerage and other infrastructures. But it might be to our advantage to chop off our portion and develop that on our own with perhaps Mr. Khan's client's help.
Good evening. My name is Vic Tom. I am here tonight specifically to say that I don't believe that the town of Maynard should allow any outside town to get into our sewer system. Back in 1920 or something, when the town decided to have a sewer system, it was designed to be a gravity feed, and since then, with all the additions and so forth, I think we've got maybe 18 pumping stations, lift stations around town. And the town of Acton has, over the years, not been too conducive to cooperating with the town of Maynard. Now, what the developer does in the town of Acton doesn't interest me, because in this day and age, people rely on automobiles. You're going to get traffic, you're going to get kids, what have you. But my main concern is that we hire engineers, and they always seem to come up with favorable numbers. It is not the town's job to guarantee to develop a successful project. And that's I think a lot of these people are missing out on what really is going on here. Because just across the river on Adams Street, town of Acton has a fairly new, and when it opened, state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant with what they call trickling beds, sand beds, where the effluent or affluent, I always get confused, goes down. And they had a concern at one time that the stuff that they were processing there was getting into a well field down below in the gravel pit. So they put in a bunch of what they call wells to kind of monitor the flow. And I guess they decided that that didn't work. But the developer supposedly has deep pockets. And if I'm reading my conservation law correctly, they don't have to go down Powder Mill Road. They can go across the river, because I believe the conservation law allows for electricity, water, and sewer to go through and under rivers and swampy areas. Thank you.
Michael Cohen, Deer Path. I heard that the police department and the fire department has ruled that, or estimated that there'll be no major impact on, 500 people moving into Powder Mill Place. It's my understanding that Maynard provides mutual aid to Concord Muse. There'll be hundreds of people, mostly seniors, I believe, moving into 129 Parker Street. So my question is, what is their definition of minimal impact? There's got to be some delay in a medical emergency. If Maynard is servicing somebody at Powder Mill Place, maybe responding to mutual aid at Concord Muse, and somebody at Deer Path has a medical emergency and has to wait an extra 10 minutes to get to the hospital. So if one person dies, 2 people die per year, is that still considered no or minimal impact?
Chandler Street. I have to admit, I never thought I'd be so interested in wastewater as I am tonight. But I did want to ask some basic questions because I've been trying to Google and get information on certain things. I'd like to better understand if Maynard has an up-to-date comprehensive wastewater management plan, and when that was last done, and when the last needs assessment was done for the comprehensive wastewater management plan. And then I'd also like to know whether anybody's looked at Acton's comprehensive waste management plan, because the needs assessment really does identify what the needs are, and take into consideration potential future build-out. And I'm not sure that this property nor 129 Harbor was really included in Maynard's, and I'm pretty sure this property was included in Acton's. So it's something to look at and get a better understanding of how this all can work together. Thank you.
David Malika, Deer Path. Very concerned about this project. I feel that it's not fairly balanced towards the town of Maynard. I believe it benefits Acton to a huge degree by comparison. Very concerned about our services and the usage of those services going to Acton, specifically police, fire, and ambulance. Just seems like we bear the lion's share of the services, and most of the benefit to the project goes to Acton. Additionally, the additional traffic flow, I really don't see how you can say that 250 cars or so will not impact traffic except on Saturdays at Wendy's. Seems a little ridiculous to me, to be quite frank. As another constituent said, certainly we will see that impact, going out to Route 2 in Concord. There's certainly no doubt about that. That already backs up now. We'll continue to see that get worse, and this is only going to increase that problem. Which may not be in the town of Maynard, but it affects many of us. Thank you.
Donna Dodson, Summer Street. I think to Vic's point, and a question that I had was, one of the first sentences when I was coming in, you were saying Acton didn't have the sewer capacity. I'm curious, what would the cost be for Acton to add the necessary sewer capacity?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I will tell you that Acton is in the process of doing studies about their treatment facility, but that's all I know at this point.
Just curious if you put a dollar amount to that. I think it might help clarify where we are in the negotiations. Thank you.
I just have one other question. Would this still be considered a friendly 40B if we said we welcome the 74 in Maynard and let Acton solve their problems their own way? Would it still be considered a friendly 40B if we said, Maynard's a great affordable town, it's always been affordable, there's the strength of this town. We welcome it. We've been, I think David and others have been fighting for affordable housing in this town for a long time. That's not the issue here. The issue is clearly sewer. And if we say the 74 in Maynard, hitch up, go to it, because you're Maynard people. But would that be considered a friendly 40B?
Well, there are other factors we're in discussion here, so that if, and I'm not saying this is true, but if we were to sit there and find another solution regarding sewer, doesn't mean that therefore there'll be a mitigation package offered to Maynard if in fact that's not being provided in the same way. So is there a potential? Everything's possible, but to be quite honest, I can't think out that particular end.
Something to consider.
I appreciate the comment. Thank you.
Yes, I have another question too. Elizabeth Stein Milligan on Lincoln Street. How much is this going to cost Maynard?
How much is it going to cost?
The whole upgrade of its infrastructure to accommodate?
We're proposing to make improvements to the powder mill line to increase the flows, which are currently being limited by issues with that piping that exists in the ground today. So there's no out-of-pocket cost that Maynard is being asked to make. the developer is making the contributions necessary to bring the project online. If it was.
Okay, thank you.
Carol Kite, Summit Street. Basically a comment, but I believe we've got, just generous view on added apartments to Maynard, but I believe we've got a developer wanting to add apartments on Gruber Brothers and on Summer Street where the Summer Street Fine Consign is. So those 3-story buildings with which is going to impact our schools and our fire department and traffic and sewer system, and I think that's something to consider. I'm not sure we need more apartments, and so that's all.
Not speaking.
I would like
Harry Newell, Deer Path. Reading through the town's FAQ.
Get right up on the mic.
I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
I read the part about when the town at Parker Street believed that it had enough acreage to cross the threshold to make a safe harbor from 40B proposals. And it also says that now we believe we're at 2%, which is above the 1.5%. Why are we not defending that if that's what we believe is the case? Why instead are we responding to the 40B proposals instead of saying we meet the standard, the 10% standard by acreage, and let the developer challenge that? The only thing it says here is it would cost us $30,000 to defend that assertion. To me, that's a small price to pay for the leverage we would get.
If we got to a point where it became an unfriendly 40B, we would be in a position to decide whether we were going to defend that or not defend that proposition. With the way the project has been proposed to date, doesn't require us to defend it because it's done in a different manner. If we got to a position where we were defending against an unfriendly 40B, that would be the time to, take the accounts of our housing stock and the open space and all that, and then attack that problem that way. But we're not at that point yet.
Okay, so
it's a different type of project. The LIP and then the 40, unfriendly 40B. They're two different types of projects. But if this ends up going to the second type of project, we would then do exactly what you just suggested.
But by agreeing to proceed with this LIP, aren't we abandoning that possibility?
We're not agreeing to. We haven't agreed to anything. We haven't even started the process of talking about it yet. So we're not at that point yet. But we don't lose our ability to go that way if it goes to a unfriendly situation. If at some point the developer decides he doesn't want to pursue the LIP any longer and he withdraws it and submits an unfriendly 40B, we will not have given up our right to challenge based on the affordable housing stock and open space formula.
So we wouldn't consider just saying, come at us, we're not interested in a friendly proposal. We
haven't made that decision yet. That's what this meeting is. This meeting is the beginning of that process.
That's what I'm encouraging then.
Okay.
Bring up with the idea of friendly versus unfriendly just sounds terrible.
My name is Jim Fulton. I don't get the question I have. We're talking about two separate LIP agreements for this project. There's one for Maynard and there's one for Acton. And my question to the Selectman would be, have you seen the LIP proposal for the Acton site? You have not seen that?
Excuse me, they have presented the LIP application which was compensated and was identical for both towns we provided. There has been no discussion with the town of Acton as to whether or not they will require some form of mitigation to approve the project. So the only thing that you have different from them at this point is because we did have a work group and because we were looking at things a little bit further along, but had not yet reached agreement. That's why you have the framework of a suggested MOA. But in the town of Acton, that is not occurring.
Okay, so we're further along in the process than what the town of Acton would be?
They may feel different from you, they may look at it and respond differently. Their public hearing starts in October. But in terms of the actual application, I incorporated into the same application all the factoids about Acton and Maynard, so that both boards were fully disclosed to the other one exactly what each one was being asked to do.
Okay, the reason I bring this up is, generally in the business world, we have some, knowledge and information that tends to become powerful, particularly when you're negotiating. And it seems to me that if we really don't know what's happening on the other side relative to the proposal, you're at somewhat of a disadvantage. Seeing what's happening here today with, what we're getting, the proposal, the memorandum of agreement, and I understand through the process that a lot of that, was contributed by, the negotiating team up front relative to, what we want in the town of Maynard. But it seems to me that this is really a very, very, very friendly for the town of Acton, not understanding, of course, what would be in the memorandum of agreement, but that's the way it appears, for us, I believe, and that should be given some serious consideration. In any negotiating position, you really need to know, what's happening on the other side. It gives you a lot of perspective, a lot of power, relative to are we getting what we really need out of this. And I can point out several areas through this that I think Acton has benefited. Maynard is providing the public safety response, particularly with the ambulance. Maynard has one fire company. Acton has 3. Concord has 2. Sudbury has 3. So when Maynard is responding to an entity that is out of town, based on proximity, that means that the people in Maynard are left unprotected. Okay, so we're looking at what the contribution would be in the sewer capacity. Maynard is pretty much, in this concept, absorbing that. What Acton's absorbing, hypothetically, would be the school situation. But most of that tax contribution, that money, is going to Acton. And I really think that, through this process that you're anticipating engaging in, is that you need to know what's happening on the other side of the border.
Okay, and I just wanted to comment to that. In the discussion with the chief, it wasn't that, I was told by somebody once, and I think somebody else can validate, that there's only literally a minute difference if both were to leave their stations simultaneously. It's not that Maynard's being asked to service. The question that was discussed was, if there was a call, could they have the capacity to deal with it? And Acton has a project that borders, that has a portion of Westford that's part of it. And Westford, in order to get there for their fire apparatus, would have to go from Westford to Littleton to Acton, back into Westford. And so, in that particular example, Acton has been asked the same question: how has that worked for you, and did you find that to be overburdened? Their response was, no, they worked it out, and obviously if a detective needs to come in, and then Westford's detective would come, but they worked it out. So the conversation with the chief was only to the issue of what would happen, and did they have the ability to service it in the event of. But it didn't say that they were taking over and doing what Acton should do or for their contribution. That was not the case whatsoever.
Right, and that certainly makes sense what you're saying, but in practicality, Maynard does make a significant response, particularly with what people were talking to previously about going to contributors. And it does have an impact. And you're basically playing the odds at some point. And the mutual aid is a wonderful concept, and it's based on humanity. But at some point, you're playing the odds, and somebody in Maynard is going to suffer. And all we're asking for is in that instance, is a little bit of reciprocity from the neighboring communities. And I don't see that happening.
I wholeheartedly disagree with the point that we don't have a mutual aid. Police and fire are both parts of comprehensive mutual aid groups. Both police and fire chiefs from the local police and fire chiefs from the other communities. So at no time are Maynard citizens uncovered or left alone or anything like that when we have a need to be in Stowe to help if they have an ambulance. A situation requires 2 ambulances and they only have 1 out, and we send our ambulance. We're never left alone or uncovered. That's a false statement.
That's not
That's the statement you made, and I'm just saying that to the rest of the people in the room, they hear that we're not have coverage, but we do have coverage. We're part of a very comprehensive mutual aid group in both fire and police. So at no time are the citizens of Maynard left unprotected.
Well, there was a situation about a month ago, and I witnessed it personally, when Maynard was making a response to the Concord Eagles, and the Concord Indians was leaving Knox Trail Road after gassing up to head back to Concord. Now, look, I don't have a problem with the mutual aid concept. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think Maynard, what Maynard offers for fire protection and police protection is outstanding, and I have no problem with sharing it. All I'm asking for is a little bit of equity that comes back toward Maynard. And as I stated before, Maynard has one fire company. That's it, just one. Acton has 3, Concord has 2, Sudbury has 3. We're depending primarily, for backup service from Stall. Those of us who are around throughout the day, we see what's happening. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I want to deny the people in the neighboring communities the benefit of mutual aid. I think it's a great thing. And I'm proud to share it. With what we have, I think it's the best. All right, but I really think that you need to look at, what's there to protect the people who are actually paying for the infrastructure in Maynard. We're going to be asked very shortly to invest a significant amount of money in building a new firehouse. Okay, and we need to see, that Maynard's really not performing as a substation for the neighboring communities. I don't think that's extreme.
I don't think we will be. Chief, would you like to talk about that?
Thank you for the question. There's 2 different things that we use. One is automatic aid and one is mutual aid. Now, automatic aid we use in high-risk situations like the mill or certain apartment buildings in town. Because the gentleman's correct, we have one engine company in service and we have one ambulance company in service. The ambulance company also cross-staffs the lab. It is true that Concord has more staff on duty, as does Acton, Sudbury, Wayland, and most of the communities in the area. In any event, we use automatic aid for our high-risk buildings, and so do other communities. Last year, we received more automatic aid than we gave, because we have a smaller department. As far as mutual aid goes, it's about 1-to-1. So for every time we go to Concord, or Acton, or Stowe, Acton, or Concord, or Stowe, or Sudbury comes here. So there's not a disparity in what we give for mutual aid as opposed to what we get. Same thing for automatic aid. We will see a slight increase in call volume based on the numbers that they come up with for autumn and place. I don't think it's an unreasonable number, it's about 30. So the gentleman that said there's going to be minimal impact, I don't believe I've ever used the term minimal. There will be an impact, just like there will be an impact with 129 Parker Street. We try to factor all that stuff in, and it's a guess. But as far as the question about mutual aid goes, we give as much as we get, and same thing with our Medicaid. So there's no disparity there. We're not subsidizing other communities.
Hi, Mary Gately, Glen Drive. I'm obviously in the minority here because when I look at this project, I see a positive. I see people coming to more affluent apartments that have money to spend in our town. And all I see downtown is stores closing, empty storefronts. And so I see a potential for a lot of new families and new people coming into the town and coming to our downtown and going to our storefronts and not stores closing and restaurants closing. I see a more affluent downtown, kind of like Hudson is doing, and our storefronts seem to be closing and they seem to be flourishing. So that's what I see when I see this project.
Thank you.
So, maybe opposite that. I think there are a lot of people here and in the rest of the town.
Can you state your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Vicki Denaro from Ricky Drive.
Thank you.
I think there are a lot of people here and in town that are very proud of Maynard's reputation as being affordable and open and diverse. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to how this development might change those dynamics. Is it going to be built as a luxury development? what are the rents going to be as far as outside of the affordable units? I'm just wondering how it's going to affect this trajectory that we've seen as far as housing prices and this being an affordable town.
Well, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. New construction costs money to build, and all the work I do for apartment development and hospital work, the costs have certainly have risen. So I expected to see rents more in line with what you've described with the Muse and stuff like that one bedroom will be somewhere between $1,900 and $2,000. But we're talking about something that if we were fortunate enough to get approved a year from now, and then it's 2 years to construct and open up, you know, you're trying to ask me a question too that's 3 years in advance, and I'm not sure what the market will be. What I can tell you today is what I see in the market, which is I see a very robust market when it comes to rentals, and even despite the fact that there has been thousands of units developed in eastern Massachusetts, that there's still a shortage and that these units are being absorbed. I see that, well, if you look at the Commonwealth of Mass as a state, you probably see that in fact it was aging and population wasn't increasing. But when you look at eastern Massachusetts, with the job market what it is, it's very dynamic, it's very robust, and knock on lots of things here that will stay that way for a long period of time to come. But today, that's the kind of rents you see for a one-bedroom unit out of the market. And of course, it has to be competitive around, otherwise people won't come.
Okay. And then if I can ask, this is probably such a big question that can't be answered tonight, and I'm sure it'll be taken into consideration by the decision makers, but what can be done as far as a specific project to make sure that Maynard does not change dramatically in a negative way from what we've known it to be?
Well, together with the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, and the selectmen, we all three have a part in, you know, making sure that everything that Maynard has or does fits into, you know, our town, the 10 development principles and the meet the fabric of the community, to try and maintain, you know, that same fabric. We're talking about stuff being the cultural district, so you want to maintain that walkability. And you want to try and maintain all of those things as we move forward. So, you know, that's a burden that we all three groups, you know, take seriously. And so, if you come to our meetings, attend, you know, Maynard develop the principles that are on our wall. And so those are the 10 things that we consider for every project. And that, you know, select the planning board does as well. So those are all things that we consider as we move forward with any project, and we'll continue to consider.
Thank you.
That it?
Yep.
All right.
Hi. Kristen Ferraro, Fowler Street. My husband and I just recently moved into Maynard this past year, and something that we loved about the town was the downtown. We were originally living closer to Boston, and as we were looking to purchase a home, slowly moved out and moved out and moved out, further and further from the city, and we love that Maynard has the downtown. And I am excited that this project, as another woman spoke to, can potentially keep the downtown growing the way Hudson is, because it is going to bring in more people to explore our downtown. And I know at least when friends come visit, my husband and I, you know, and we want to bring them downtown, it is kind of depressing to see buildings that are closed. And I know, at least in our, you know, with our friends and whatnot, they'd love to see a project like this, and then maybe they can be over this way too and move over this way. So I'm interested in it. So thank you.
One question too, you know, in conversation with the woman who did the economic impact study, I kept trying to flatter her because of course you always want to talk about the positive things the project would do, and I said, how do you take into capture the fact that you want people to take a right-hand turn out of a project instead of going left? And it's a number she couldn't put her arms around, but I truly hope and truly believe that the answer to a lot of towns who need economic growth is the fact that you have to get people to move in, and with that comes the dollars that get spent afterwards. So I hope.
Well, if anyone else has any questions? Is it? I'm wasting time, sorry.
for Fowler Street. My wife just spoke. I guess my question is probably more for the people in this room than anyone on stage. And what's the alternative for that property? Because I go to the Stop and Shop and I look and it's, you know, this former industrial space with heavy machinery leaching God knows what into the river. And I just think if this project doesn't go through the way, sort of in the friendly route with, you know, the developer offering different things, whether it's bleachers, which as a current school teacher, my first job is to keep kids safe, and if New Bleachers does that, then I think that is good for education. But just if they're offering things, if it goes in an unfriendly route, does Maynard lose? If it doesn't happen, does it just sit there empty? Sort of like, what's the alternative? Those are sort of my concerns. Thank you.
Okay, so, thank everybody. We just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We appreciate the comments. We have, most of it down. There'll be certainly things that we'll consider in our selectmen's meeting when we start to discuss this topic in earnest, probably within the next couple of meetings, if not even somewhat tomorrow night. Probably tomorrow night, just talk about what our next step will be. But certainly everybody in the room and everybody else in Maynard is a welcome guest at all of our meetings. All of our meetings going forward with Joel will likely, not likely, but will be, the public variety. That does not mean that at every meeting questions and comments will be accepted or allowed, but it means that the deliberations or any negotiations that we would have if we got to that point would be public. Whether or not comments and questions are allowed during those meetings is strictly up to the board as a group. But those meetings will start fairly soon, and it will be on our agenda when they're going to take place. And to someone's point earlier, if we're going to have Aaron McCloskey in, or we're going to have BHP do parking and stuff, and we're going to talk about those things, that will be on our agenda. So we'll know what we're going to talk about each week as we move forward, and the people that have concerns about certain aspects of the project will be able to come and have their concerns directly answered by the experts that the town has hired, that Joel has hired, and those peer review people, so that everybody can be part of the process and have their questions answered. So that's